Hello and welcome back to the channel. It has been years since I've posted. So much has happened and I'm so sorry that I haven't posted any videos. But to bring this channel back, I'm doing a video on the 10 things I learned about owning a coffee trailer. Now for context, I bought a semi-converted horse box and turned it into a fully fledged coffee trailer and took it out on the road. I have since sold that coffee trailer towards the end of last year, and there were a few reasons behind that, but I'm going to talk through the 10 important things that I have learned along the way. So coming in with number one, towing. So I had never towed anything before, so I had to think about what car I'm going to buy. Can it have the right capacities, the weight limits? Does it have to be four-wheel drive? So I went through so many tow cars, you wouldn't believe it. So you're putting a lot of strain on a car when you're towing with it, and a converted horse box is quite heavy. It was probably 1.5 tons in total. So ideally, you do need a 4x4. The problem I had is ultra low emission zone in London. So I had a BMW X5. It was a great car, but it was a diesel. I had to sell it. So then I got a Mercedes ML 500, big V8, really bad on fuel, and it had so many electrical issues. I ended up having to scrap that and I lost loads of money doing that. I had a Volvo V70, was actually a great tow car, also quite thirsty, but a good cheap way into towing. If you've never towed before, you need to have a lot of practice. So you're reversing round corners. I've had to do it before where I was reversing and the wheel had to be halfway on a curb, and I had to precisely do it on a busy road in Clapham in London. And it was so stressful. I had to do it every week. And I'm so glad I don't have to do that again. The day I picked up our coffee trailer, obviously I had to tow it back. And I was all the way in the north of England in Harrogate. And I had to tow it all the way back to London. And I was terrified. So it's not for the faint of heart if you've never done it before, but you soon get used to it. So it's easy once you're moving in a straight line forward. Corners aren't too bad, but it's the reversing that really gets you. Okay, number two, pitches. It is hard to get a pitch if you have a coffee trailer. There's two kinds of pitches you can get. So you can get a permanent pitch or you can get temporary pitches at the likes of markets and festivals. Competition is so high with coffee trailers because so many people want to set up their own businesses. And getting a coffee trailer is quite an affordable way in because you can buy them for as little as £5,000. This means you're competing with absolutely everyone who's new to the market, but also those legacy sellers. And if people have good relationships with, say, festivals or markets they've already dealt with, those festivals and markets are just going to deal with them again. The way we got our first market is it was a brand new market and one of our customers knew the organizer and referred us. From there, we were regular attendees at the market, but unfortunately, I had to give up our spot because I wasn't free on Sundays anymore, and sadly, we lost out on all that revenue. Then there was a point where I wanted to come back because I was free again, but we lost the spot to another person. Permanent pitches are absolutely great. If you can get a permanent pitch and it's profitable, that's the way to do it, because you just don't want to be towing that trailer every single day or every single week to a new spot. There's websites out there, like there's one called Add to Event, and people actually put up adverts for events that they're going to be putting on, and they'll say, I need a coffee van for this or coffee trailer for this. You can respond to those, but a lot of the time you have to pay for them, and it's just a bit of a pain, and you really want something that's more regular rather than these sporadic events where you don't really know where your next pound is coming from. Number three, demand. So weekend demand is the highest demand. There are so many events on weekends, not weekdays, so you're going to have to give up a lot of your weekends. If you think a car boot sale, a market, a festival, how often are they held on weekdays? Everyone's at work. So you should expect that your weekends are going to be fully taken up by your coffee trailer working on weekends. So say goodbye to your social life. You're going to have to be up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday. Can't go for beers on a Friday. Sunday market, can't go out on a Saturday. So yeah, this caused me a lot of issues because I actually am a musician and I play gigs on Saturday nights, and I get in at about 2 a.m. So I cannot be waking up at 5 a.m. to set up the trailer and take it to a market. And for context, if a market starts at, say, 9 or 10 a.m., expect to wake up at 5 a.m. because you're going to have to wake up, you're going to have to go to your trailer, you're going to have to load the trailer, you're going to have to hitch up your tow hook, and if you're on your own, that can take a little while unless you got a camera on your reverse of your car. And then you're going to have to drive to the event, you're going to have to pitch up at the event, you're going to have to turn all your equipment on. The coffee machine alone can take 40 minutes to an hour to heat up. So by that time, 3-4 hours have passed? So it's not a matter of getting out of bed, turning the car on, taking it to the event, and it's ready. Number 4, power requirements. So this was kind of a whole new world for me. In the coffee shop, we obviously have power requirements, but we had an electrician come in and do it all for us. And we had a kind of diagram of how much all our equipment is going to take, and that espresso machine needs a 32 amp power supply. But that's a one and done, right? With a coffee trailer, every event asks you, what are your power draws? So every piece of equipment you use is going to have a different power draw. Obviously, the espresso machine having the highest power draw. And essentially, an event is kind of rationing out the power they're able to give, because they might be running off generators that you're going to plug into. You might be sharing that generator with multiple other stalls, so food stalls or just any other stalls. Some are just running lights, some are running cookers. So power draw is actually a big deal. And if you have a coffee trailer with lots of equipment in there, so you've got your coffee machine, and then you've got a toasty maker, you've got your grinder, you've got fridges, all of those things are drawing power. And if you're not plugging into power at their event, you then have to provide your own power. So then you got to figure out, have I got batteries that are big enough to power my equipment? If they can power that equipment, how long for? If my event is 5 or 6 hours long, can the batteries handle it? If you're running off a generator, same story. Is your generator big enough for the power draw that your equipment uses? For example, if you have, a 6 kilowatt power draw, you need a massive generator. So you've also got to think about, how are you going to transport that generator? Are you going to be able to fit it in the trailer and tow it along with the trailer? Can it fit in the back of your car? You've got to think about all these things when it comes to power. It is one of the most complicated things, to be honest. And there is advice out there online, but it's not really that simple. And if you're running off things like batteries, then you need inverters, you need it wired in specific ways. Honestly, I didn't enjoy the element of, will I have enough power for this event? Or will I trip the electric somewhere? I actually had it once where we did an event and I was plugged into the power of a building nearby, and it was just enough. And the equipment I had, like the multi-plug and all that sort of stuff, was just enough for it to power my equipment. Someone, without telling me, plugged into my multi-plug and it blew all the electrics, and I didn't have a spare. So I just had to pack up and tow the trailer away. Nothing I could do about it. Okay, number 5, regulations. So you're going to need things like public liability insurance. That's quite easy to obtain. Then you might need insurance for the equipment inside your coffee trailer. Some insurers will be like, where are you storing your coffee trailer? If it's stored unsecurely, so not in a gated area, then they might say, well, we can't insure you for the contents, but we can insure you for public liability when you're at an event. So that means you're taking the risk on potentially losing that equipment and not getting any money back. Other regulations, people might ask you for kind of safety reports, various things that are pretty common, but if you've never done it before, you'll be like, what's this? Have I got my fire safety system in place? The weight of the trailer, so it could be that you're going to a festival, you overweigh the trailer with lots of equipment, and then they weigh it and they say, this is too heavy, it's unsafe. There's just loads of things around regulations that you just got to be really wary of, and try and make sure that you ask people who are hosting the events for all those things up front, and make sure you give yourself enough notice in case you have to make any changes to your setup or your trailer. Number 6, equipment. You need reliable equipment for your coffee trailer. So most people need the ability to run off-grid. So I mentioned before about the power requirements. Well, your equipment is very important, and it might be different to the equipment in a typical coffee shop. For example, I was using a Frappuccino Contempo dual fuel espresso machine. Dual fuel just means that it can run off electricity and or gas. So you'd have an LPG tank and that would heat up the machine, and you'd require a small amount of electricity, so potentially running off batteries, just to power the things like the lights and a couple other bits. So you need to be really aware of the kind of equipment that is best used in a trailer versus a coffee shop. You ideally want to be using equipment that's lightweight. You're running at super high demand, like you'll be non-stop, especially if you're at something like a festival. So you want equipment that can handle the test of time. You can't have a small espresso machine with a little boiler, because you're going to be making so many coffees on the trot, that boiler's going to deplete. You won't be able to steam your milk. You won't be able to pour an Americano. You won't be able to do anything, and it will pause your service, which will cause issues. And if you've got a queue out the door, you want to make sure you have the right equipment for the job. So I would fully recommend, if you want to go off-grid, getting equipment that can run off both gas and electric. But then you might get events that say we don't want any LPG here. So that's why having the dual option rather than just one or the other is a good idea. Number 7, maintenance. So ideally you want to know how to maintain most of these things yourself. That includes the trailer itself, maybe the car, even just things like getting flat tires, and your equipment. I saved myself a lot of money by learning how to maintain my Frappuccino espresso machine myself. It had a lot of little minor issues that if I was to call an engineer out would have cost me £150 a time, and they would have had the part and they might charge me another £50 to £100 for a little part, and it's unnecessary money. You can just buy the parts yourself. It's all pretty much just spanners and screwdrivers. You can replace them. There might be some trial and error, but even with trial and error, it is usually cheaper to fix those kind of things yourself. And then with the trailer, just making sure that all the lights work when you plug it into your car, making sure the tires are all good, making sure it's safe to tow. If it's an old converted horse box, like one of those rice trailers, these are super old. They can rust really badly at the bottom, and you don't want any issues when you're towing on, say, a motorway and that trailer, a wheel falling off. These kind of things do happen. So maintenance, got to be on top of it. Have a toolbox and learn how to do as much of it you can yourself. Number 8, money. So you can make a lot of money with a coffee trailer, but you need to pick your battles. So imagine you've got a max amount of output for your coffee machine. Say that's 200 coffees an hour, right? So you might only run an event that people want coffee for 3 hours of the day. That's a maximum, absolute maximum of 600 coffees in those 3 hours. So if you think about your staffing levels, the pitch fee, and then your sales price of coffee, you want to make sure that you can make the right amount of money. So if you think a festival and you have one espresso machine with 2 groups, it can make 2 coffees at the same time, and you've got 2 baristas, you have your max output, you know your max cost of your staff, that's the most you can absolutely make. So you kind of got to work backwards from there. You go, right, today, this is the most money I can make. What is my break even? What will I be happy with? And then imagine the weather, it starts raining, you lose all those customers. So there's so many variables, and you can only make a certain amount of money. If you're a food truck or a food trailer and you've got those higher ticket items, say 10 to 15 pounds for chicken and chips, you can churn a lot of those out really quickly because you're frying loads of chips at once, loads of chicken at once, and you can have the same amount of staff as you would with a coffee trailer, but you're able to make way more sales at higher ticket. Food for festivals makes more sense if you've got to pay 10 grand for a pitch, but coffee makes less sense unless you can add something else in there. I actually learned that I could make more money doing, say, a Sunday market because the pitch fee would only be 60 quid than doing a busy festival where the pitch fee is in the hundreds, if not thousands of pounds, because even though I might make less revenue, my profit margins would be bigger at the market versus the festival. And remember, on the money side of things, if you're doing events, it's sporadic. If there's demand for summer events, that's fine. But then what happens in winter? You might make great money for 3 months of the year and no money for the rest of the year. So when I was talking about getting good pitches, this all kind of feeds into it, because you get good pitches or permanent pitches, then you can make more money. There's days you might make less and days you might make more, but at least you've got something steady, a bit like having a coffee shop. Number 9, costs. So getting into a coffee trailer isn't that expensive. As I've said, 5 grand upwards, you can get a coffee trailer. Sometimes you can get them fully kitted out for 7, 8 grand because so many people fail at this business and want just any kind of money they can get back out of their trailer. You will incur costs, obviously things like stock, staffing costs if you need help, fuel if you're towing, and obviously if you're towing, it takes a lot more fuel. Storage of the trailer, that's a big one. Where do you store it? We're based in London. I had to rent storage for the trailer, and it is not easy. Insurance, and so many like ancillary bits that you just don't think about. The costs can be quite high. The costs are definitely not as high as owning a coffee shop. Coffee shops, you have big fixed overheads. This is money you need to make before you've sold a single coffee. With a coffee trailer, it's not so bad. You might have a pitch fee, but that's about it. Right, coming to number 10, the last one, failures. We had failures with the coffee trailer. It was one of the reasons I sold it. We had, in our time, the few years we had it, 2 permanent pitches with that trailer. One, we spent an absolute fortune getting electricity plugged in. We were basically pitched up outside a block of flats on quite a busy road, but there was works going on at the train station nearby. So everyone was walking on the other side of the road because they couldn't get access on our one. So we started trading and no one was walking past us. They were all on the other side of the road and we did everything we could to draw people in. We were also in the wrong area. The area we were in was not ready for specialty coffee and I knew that. And actually I was really apprehensive of setting this coffee trailer up in this pitch, but my business partner at the time convinced me to do it and ultimately we lost a lot of money doing that. The beautiful thing about a coffee trailer is if something is not going well, you can pull it out. So that's what I did. I said to the landlord, look, this is not going well. And the rent was super expensive there. I said, we've just got to pull it out. When I told him that, he offered us 50% off the rent just to keep us there. And even then I said no, because it was also freezing cold in that trailer. I just did not enjoy any second of being in there in the depths of winter. After I pulled the trailer out of there, I was putting it in random events, but it was mostly weekend work. And then more recently, we were offered a permanent pitch in the car park of a community centre. And I thought this could be a great idea. It was a really big space. We had seating outside. The crew were amazing, but the footfall just was not, there was no footfall. We would make £100 a day and we just could not sustain at £100 a day. They didn't even charge us any rent, but I was staffing that trailer and I was having to pay the staff member and I made no money. We made no money in that spot. And some days my staff overheads were more than we made. After that, the trailer got broken into. So we were at this permanent pitch. Someone broke into the trailer. They stole our coffee grinder. It was a £2 grand grinder. And they probably stole another £1,000 worth of other equipment that we had in there, whether that's tools or anything else. And for me, that was the last straw with the coffee trailer. It was not worth it for me. I put the coffee trailer up for sale maybe the next day after it got broken into because there was no actual damage to the trailer. They managed to squeeze in through the hatch. And I managed to sell the trailer for exactly the price I bought it for. Actually a little bit more, but when I think about what I spent on the trailer, it was pretty much the same as I paid for it. And at the time, there was huge demand. I had a lot of people on eBay and Facebook Marketplace messaging me, so I managed to get asking price. Another big reason I sold it is because a lot of our work was weekend work, and I wanted to weigh up my lifestyle versus the business and was it worth it? So I play gigs on Saturday nights, and I get paid for those gigs and I enjoy them. So I couldn't do a Sunday market even if I was getting paid, and even if I was getting paid more. The enjoyment of working in a coffee trailer was not being outweighed by the enjoyment of playing drums in my band. And the money I was making in my band was only a little bit less than I would net income from the coffee trailer. Obviously, gross sales would be way bigger on the coffee trailer, but my net income straight in my pocket was probably the same or similar by playing in my band and actually having fun. So that's why I sold the coffee trailer, and I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, but every other TikTok I'm served is someone opening their own coffee trailer. And I just want to say, be careful and be aware that it is hard work and it is a tough slog. My recommendation if you want to open your own coffee trailer would be keep your day job, run a few markets at weekends and see if you like it, see if it can long term fit in with your lifestyle. If you like going out on weekends, whether that's partying or whether you like doing more wholesome activities, you can't do that anymore with a coffee trailer. If you buy a coffee trailer and thoroughly enjoy those weekend markets and think, yes, I could do this forever, then see how much money you can make at those markets and see if it outweighs your 9 to 5. From there, you can look more into permanent pitches. But what I would say is, if you're looking at permanent pitches, do it from day one. There's nothing better than having a permanent pitch in a good location. So I'd say make a permanent pitch your goal, and the weekend stuff, that's just to bring a bit of money in and get a bit of experience. Anyway, my voice is going. Obviously, I haven't done one of these videos in ages. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'm going to be uploading way more regularly, everything in the coffee world, everything I've learned. It has been 5 years now. We're coming up to our 5-year anniversary. So I look forward to posting more videos from my coffee shop, and I'll see you in the next one.